In the throne room among the people, the prince stood before the king, kneeling. The king angrily shouted at him that he was depriving him of his right to the throne and that he should leave immediately. However, the prince was looking forward to this moment and thanked his father. The latter asked him again in bewilderment, was he really not even going to ask why he was being kicked out? This happened in the kingdom of Gaitan Nigan. The seventh prince Noah, rising from his knees, replied that he believed it was because of his incompetence. The king replied that the main thing was that he understood it. In his father's estimation, he had absolutely no ability. In this country, all heirs are equal, so they undergo the same training. Even without special abilities, you can become a king. Pointing his finger at the prince, the king added that he had neither the ability nor the desire to become king. However, his exile could cause unwanted gossip in the country, so he grants him the province of Carter. From the outside, it will look like he was sent there to become a lord or whatever. Noah thanked him happily. Father didn't understand what that was supposed to mean. At that moment, the sixth prince Dag, who had the skill of a holy sword-bearer, called out to him. Grabbing Noah by the collar, he shouted at him, asking what he was doing, whether he really had any interest in the throne. After all, he was expelled, deprived of his inheritance rights, so he does not understand where such calm comes from. Noah thought that he wanted to be expelled. He will just wait until it is over. He said cheerfully that it was very shameful because he wanted to become king so much. However, these words only angered the seventh prince even more, who, pulling out his sword, shouted that he angered him every time. The king watched them, thinking that one crown prince trying to kill another in front of the ruling monk was even worse. Doug struck with such force that the chandelier on the ceiling shook. Noah fell to the floor, and the sword broke into pieces. This puzzled the sixth prince. Sitting on the floor, Noah said that he had scared him. He had not noticed the sword at all. He asked if he missed on purpose because he was so pathetic. The people around him started whispering, not understanding what had happened to the sword. They thought it was some kind of joke, because the prince couldn't miss. A shocked Doug confirmed Noah's words. He stood up, getting ready to leave, and at that moment a white cat with a bow approached him. As he passed by Doug, he said about hiding the skill. Doug thought that his sword had moved faster than sound that time. The sword, which was stronger than dragon scales, had broken from a light blow, or so it seemed. He remembered how the seventh prince had grabbed his weapon with his own hand during the blow. Turning around to watch Noah leave, he shouted that he understood the reason. But he was already standing in the magic circle and smilingly said that they would see each other in 5 years. He promised to have a good rest in his lands. The king was perplexed. He could not understand what kind of light it was, and the sixth prince irritably demanded that he stop. But Noah did not listen to him and, having said goodbye, disappeared. At first there was silence in the hall, and then the king realized in shock that it was teleportation magic. Only sages can use it, or it is not such an ancient magic, he wondered. Meanwhile, the prince was riding in a carriage and reading a book. White Cat Rory asked him if it was true that he had been deprived of the right to the throne. He asked her if she had forgotten about his great plans. The familiar replied that she remembered. He smiled and said that losing his rights to the throne, being exiled to God-forsaken lands where no one even knew his name, all this was part of his plan. He happily added that he would finally be able to live the life he wanted. His plan had worked. Rory responded with affection that he was happy about being labeled as a mediocrity. A master of the sword, a sage, a living legend, a twice reincarnated hero, in fact, he is very far from the concept of incompetent. The familiar asked how the hero's third life could turn into this. He told her to listen carefully. He had indeed been reborn twice, and was a hero twice. Clutching his head, he added with irritation, being a swordmaster is just wildly infuriating. All life revolves around power, and people constantly burden you with useless things. Heroes always attract unnecessary attention and negativity, and when monsters appear, he is always sent to sort things out. And he lived his life as a hero twice, after which he realized that he does not like working. So this time he was reborn in a peaceful country as a prince, and ascending to the throne promised only another headache. So he decided to withdraw from this race for power, pretending that he was simply incapable of anything. And supposedly he is talentless in magic, can't lift a sword properly, has a head of water. Even during the assessment, he used magic to change the grade so that he would look talentless. That's why he was considered an incompetent hooligan. The familiar replied that she had wanted to tell him that for a long time. But he interrupted her, saying that she shouldn't hate him for it. She was in cat form now, so everything would be fine. He started to open the carriage door, which surprised Rory. Just at that moment, a large boulder fell on the carriage, literally crushing it, frightening the horse. The cat in the carriage screamed loudly, but the main character managed to escape from there with the help of magic. Examining the stone, he wondered whether it was a meteorite or a boulder from a volcano. At that moment, his familiar called out to him. There was an angry girl with cat ears and a tail sitting in the rubble who said that if they were going to be attacked, they should have told him in advance. He replied that he had warned her. She must be going crazy. The irritated girl shouted that he was the only crazy one here. He repelled the attack with inhuman speed, because now he was using high magic. He calmly replied that she shouldn't talk nonsense. In the days when he was a swordmaster, even a child could create such magic. Rory replied that it was in the past. But then they heard a strange noise, which made her scared and asked what the footsteps were. Looking back, they saw a giant beast's face with an open mouth, towering over the tree. They saw a giant turtle with a sharp shell towering over the trees. They realized in horror that it was a volcano turtle, which is an ES rank monster. The protagonist was surprised that she was also scared, because she was a demon herself. She was outraged that he sealed her powers. Rory's true form was sealed in the archives. He locked it there when he was a child. The girl said that now was not the time to remember. She was wondering what they could do. However, the guy paraphrased her words, which angered the girl. The turtle received a powerful blow right on the shell, which made it growl menacingly. Rory screamed in fear and saw that he was about to fall right on them and began to call the guy. The protagonist began to use the creator's magic, namely the blade. He prepared to strike at the approaching fragment. He gave us one powerful blow to all the approaching units, which caused cracks to appear in all directions. Rory's mouth dropped open in surprise when she saw the protagonist's magic. All the approaching rocks were cut into tiny squares that no longer posed a threat. Rory couldn't believe her eyes, because they shattered with one swing of his hand. She thought it was impossible. He calmly replied that he had broken it. When he was a sword master, even a mid-level adventurer could handle such a turtle. She replied that there was no need to consider the life of a swordmaster as a quality standard. They were living in a completely different time now. At that moment, the turtle roared, causing them to try to figure out what language it was speaking. Its turtle roar was getting on the nerves of the entire area. After that, he began to concentrate a ball of powerful energy in his hand, intending to make her disappear. He used his magic, directing it at her. His blow hit its target, causing a massive explosion. Rory shook from it, wondering if this was some new level of high-level magic. But the guy said no. He said it was a normal fireball. His attack had left a rut behind him. He was upset that the carriage was broken, and only now did he think that it would have been much easier to fly. After that, he immediately took off. The confused girl screamed, not understanding why he left her. He was too gifted for her. The main character was already calmly flying in the sky, feeling as if he had forgotten something. The girl watched the main character standing in front of her, saying that he saved her. In her eyes, he looked like he was an ancient hero. Earlier, in the Carter province of Ein village, people were worried. A girl said that monsters were rampaging again. An old man asked her not to worry so much. This place was protected by a magical barrier of an ancient hero who protected them. A large magic circle was placed above the city. In ancient times, when an ancient hero traveled through this place, he placed a protective barrier here. That is why the elder is sure that there is no reason to worry. But this city borders an unknown forest, a dangerous place that carries a lot of risk. So Lista was worried, because the barrier is very ancient. Will everything be okay? Suddenly, people saw something in the sky. They saw the image of a volcanic turtle, an S-rank monster, in the distance. They stood in the middle of the village in shock and looked at it. The powerful blow caused cracks to appear on the ancient barrier. The girl realized that it was beginning to crumble, and the monster became furious. People thought they were doomed. Without a barrier, the place would be destroyed. They didn't understand what to do, because they could all become food for the monster. After that, they didn't start running away in panic. Even with the barrier, the village had enough problems, like poverty, but this is Lista's home and she grew up there, so she has to do something. She walked confidently towards the monster, and the people tried to figure out what she was trying to do. She shouted at them that she would hold off the monster. The girl ran, and the villagers tried to stop her. Behind her was the figure of the monster. If she continued to run, she would quickly be caught, but if this was a chance to take him away from the village, then she should try. But at some point, the girl tripped and fell to the ground. As she lay in the middle of the wasteland, the turtle noticed her, which frightened her. But at that moment, she saw a carriage with a monster's head rising above it. She was surprised that strangers were in such a place and shouted at them with all her might to run away. Just at that moment, the monster struck. However, what she saw next happened in a flash. The main character who had destroyed the ancient monster stood before her. She thought he had saved her. The man she was seeing for the first time seemed to have come from the pages of a children's fairy tale about ancient heroes. She was very delighted by what was happening. At that moment, she noticed Rory calling him. She sat on the ground, angry that he had abandoned her. He was no use. She would have to transform into her flying form to catch up with him. After that, she transformed into another form, saying that she had not taken the form of other animals except human and feline for a long time. This was exactly the scene that Lista observed, who screamed that she was a monster. Meanwhile, at the residence of the lord of the province of Carter, the protagonist arrived at the place. He was pleased that the mansion was in the wilderness, a better place for knowledge, and you cannot imagine. No one would think of going to such a remote place. Turning around, he decided to ask the girl accompanying him what she thought. However, there was no one there. In a panic, he realized that he had forgotten her. But after that, he cheerfully decided that he was doing fine. But a monster appeared above his head and screamed that this was very bad. It was Rory, who was indignant that he had abandoned her, and he hadn't even noticed that she was gone. He asked her in bewilderment who she was. Then he added that he wouldn't believe it until he saw her human form. She was outraged because he had abandoned her. She had to fly here in her true form. Rory screamed that he had abandoned such an important assistant. He replied that he had not seen her in this form for a long time. Looking at him was anger. She added that she would never forgive him for today and would destroy him. The atmosphere changed to tense, and the guy menacingly asked again who she was going to fight. She was frightened by his menacing look and said that she would think about her behavior. He told her that she grasped everything on the fly. She called him names in response, adding that she was scared. At that moment, Lista appeared behind the girl and said that it was simply amazing. Just think, one look was enough to pacify the dragon. The protagonist, perplexed, asked who she was. She introduced herself to him with a smile and thanked him for saving her. Their settlement was attacked by a volcano turtle, but he showed up and saved them. Noah was shocked by her appearance. She threw herself into his arms, thanking him again for saving the villagers. She called him the new hero who had tamed the dragon. Noah thought she smelled really nice and asked her why she thought he was the new local hero. Rory said they had discussed it on the flight. Also, the village belongs to Carter Province. She added that he was a good guy because he revealed his powers on the very first day. The main character was in a panic from these words because he did not want this. He realized that his perfect plan had failed. Lista asked him what had happened. Rory replied that it was some kind of seizure. The guy asked her in a panic what she had done because everything had been going great up until that moment. And now she had brought this girl here, and it was no longer a secret that he was a genius. She changed back into her human form and said that she thought she had said that people had known for a long time that he was gifted. He asked her again. She added that, without noticing it, he had already done many things that showed it to others, like when a whole flock of monsters attacked the capital. He replied that he had destroyed them only because they were disturbing his sleep, but he remembered using stealth magic back then. Rory said that he must not have woken up properly. That's why the magic didn't work and all the knights saw him deal with those monsters. It shocked them. This is just one of many exploits. Although the king and his stupid brother never understood it, the main character wondered if he was as stupid as they were. Lista said with admiration that such a wonderful person had appeared in Carter Province. Taking his hand, she greeted the new hero with all her heart, and her eyes were shining with admiration. The guy tried to say that he didn't know how to do anything properly, but she continued that it was just amazing modesty for such an amazing person. But that was exactly what she expected from him. Rory mockingly replied that his plan for a carefree life had been shattered. After this, his loud cry was heard separately, saying that he did not understand how everything could have come to this. Later, he thought with disappointment about how it had all come to this. Nearby, a girl in a cat form was stretching calmly. He needed to pretend to be useless, so that he would be thrown out of the castle and sent to the border territory into exile. Meanwhile, Lista decided to become a maid, saying that she was done with cleaning. He thanked her, although he did not ask for it. He managed to show off his abilities to the first local resident he met. He began to ask her what she was doing here. it was time for the children to return to her village. She replied that from that day on she would serve the master, repaying the debt for saving her life. Therefore, he could order her around whatever he wanted. There were some things she wouldn't do until they had a relationship. He agreed and added that, frankly, she even scared him, and she probably thought so herself before, but she didn't have to try that hard. She thought that it meant that he, as the lord of this land, was going to make every inhabitant happy, so there was no need to work so hard. The guy was horrified, not understanding how she even took it that way. Rory said that there was only one person who knew about his powers. The local lord had high standards. He thought that only she knew about his powers. No matter how much she told him about them, no one would believe her. The servants from the previous lord are still in your mansion. It is worth showing them your own worthlessness first. Just at that moment, there was a knock on the door, and he allowed entry. The head butler of the Carter estate, Sebastian, entered the room. He bowed and greeted the new master. The protagonist realized that he was responsible for the servants, and came just in time he could put himself in the worst light. Calling him Grandpa, he asked if he had any questions. The man replied that the rumors were true. He really was rude. Noah was surprised that he immediately started being rude and decided to continue in the same spirit, saying that he was disrespectful. But the man raised his head and told the gentleman that gossip about him had already reached them, an incompetent prince who was a mistake of the royal family. Deep inside, the boy was glad that they thought of him that way. He realized that he simply hated him, and his savior had finally revealed himself, so he could remain incompetent in the eyes of others. However, Lista decided to intervene in the conversation. She said that Mr. Noah was an amazing person. He saved her and the village from the volcano turtle. The guy mentally asked her to be quiet. He replied that no one would believe that he could defeat his volcanic turtle because he was incapable of anything as the master of these lands. This is exactly what the protagonist expected from him. He added loudly that the only person he would accept as a host was the former Lord Munota Carter. Noah remarked that this sounded very irresponsible. Lista asked if it was normal to keep such a person under her control. He replied that everything was fine. If she didn't like something, she could return to the village. He added that it was only natural that they didn't like him. First of all, they couldn't trust such a vast territory to someone like him. Sebastian agreed with him. Noah thought that the butler wanted to throw him out of the territory. He just needed a reason that he was useless. He threw himself into the man's arms with tears in his eyes, thanking him for everything. It shocked him. The protagonist said that he could learn to manage for the sake of the lands. And it doesn't matter how many times he hits him. For this butler, he will give it his all. Thanks to him, he will be able to show his complete uselessness to all the other workers, all for the good of reputation. Sebastian thought that he accepted him despite such disrespect and recognized him as his confidant. He did not understand what it was, whether he was one of the king's judges, but he still decided that he was nothing more than a useless prince. He said proudly, so as not to be misunderstood, he had no reason to associate with anyone but him. After that, he left, and the protagonist was satisfied with the end of the dialogue. Rory said that this was an exhaustive dialogue, and without a reason. At night, people gathered in the cave and talked about the new owner of the land. They discussed his mental abilities, saying that the previous lord was the same. It seems that they exile anyone to the province. A man in a dark cloak with large wings on his back said that they were continuing. Nothing would interfere with their plans. Everyone agreed with him. He suggested with a smile that they should thank the prince. He gleefully decided that they would make the world of men entirely theirs. Perhaps a crisis was coming for the irresponsible prince. Later, the servants of the estate gathered in the hall, and on the second floor, the butler stood before them. He announced that he was introducing the owner to them. This was Mr. Noah Carter, the new owner of these lands. The main character appeared before them, sitting on a throne, wearing a crown on his head, and wearing only a cloak. Lista was waving a fan in front of him, and the cat was sitting on her legs. He added that he hoped for their fruitful work together. He asked List to step away from him, who was wondering what kind of performance it was. He replied that it was as it should be. Didn't it look stupid? Those present were stunned. They could not understand what was happening, because apparently the useless prince was not just a rumor. Based on his greeting, they tried to guess what would happen next. The butler was irritated by his behavior. He looked down at them and could feel how they did not accept him. The butler shouted at him to get dressed immediately. He was glad that the butler was being sincere with him. Thanks to him, word of this would spread everywhere. Lista wondered what he would do next. He replied that he wanted to look even more stupid, but this time dressed. Then he waved his cloak and ordered everyone to listen to him. He announced that they were going to change staff from today. The maids were shocked and asked him what he meant. Was he really going to fire them? The butler asked him in a panic what he was planning. The main character did not understand what they were talking about, because firing such talented workers is absolutely irresponsible. Rory asked him if he was up to something stupid again, and if so, how would he know who was talented and who wasn't? Pointing his finger, he said he would just point to the ones in the front row. He then pointed at 3 workers, one by one, saying that those he had pointed at were fired. The staff was in a panic about what was happening. Sebastian asked him to stop fooling around. They were the most talented and had been working here the longest. Noah mockingly replied that he was sorry. His soul was led to do everything his own way. And he thought to himself that he was very good. He just fired people for no reason, just like the most irresponsible person in the world. People began to grumble that this could not be. However, the people he pointed at turned into demons at that moment, asking him how he could know who they really were. The butler panicked at the sight before him. He asked in shock how they dared to pretend to be workers. Noah froze at this, and one of the demons asked how he'd exposed them. The guy answered that to recognize the presence of a demon, it was enough to detect at least a drop of their magic. The demon was shocked, because he sensed her with one glance. Noah asked irritably whether it was bad that the servants were demons. The butler didn't understand what he was saying, and the demon replied that they were the enemies of humanity. Every child knew that. His face was filled with anger. The protagonist asked Rory, puzzled if this was true. She replied that, unlike his previous life, it was. He wondered why he didn't know. She replied that it was because he skipped all his classes at the castle. He grabbed his head and said that he had only fired the employees with the highest magical potential. Who knew that this would lead to problems? Rory asked if he was okay, because it didn't mean anything. But then Lista, her eyes shining with admiration, said that he was also a lord who could recognize demons at a glance. She was inspired, because this is what she expected from him. Meanwhile, the demon was angry, because his plan to destroy humanity was so stupidly thwarted because of him. Releasing his power, he screamed that it was impossible. His body began to change, his horns grew in size, and his ears became more pointed. He decided to destroy every single one of them, and ordered the others that the fight would begin now. But Noah was near his hand and grabbed it. He said that it was his mistake, but there was no need to get so mad. He takes back his words about firing. This stunned the demon, because he did not understand how he quickly appeared next to him. But what was more striking was that his hand was very heavy. He could not move at all. He looked very scary through the demon's eyes, and his eyes were burning. It seemed to him that the guy was speaking in an evil voice, offering to live in peace from now on. Frightened, he decided to quickly hide, which is why he broke through the wall, finding himself on the street. The main character, with tears in his eyes, did not understand why he was running away. Rory answered that he was scared and why he did not see it. Noah noticed the staff present whispering about how he had discovered demons and nearly torn them to shreds. The guy thought it was simply impossible, but the girls were already looking at him with admiration, and Lista was expecting exactly that from him. Afterwards, they picked him up in their arms, saying that they would serve him faithfully, and the lands of Carter would prosper in his hands. As he was being tossed, Noah sighed in frustration, and Rory congratulated him on having even more followers, but he yelled at her to stop. Meanwhile, the butler was off to the side. Sebastian knelt down and said that it just so happened that their longtime workers turned out to be demons, and even the former master did not recognize them as spies from the demon world. The protagonist tried to stop him, but the man continued so that he wouldn't even think that they were done with him. The boy threw himself into his arms, asking him to keep it up because he adored him. The man angrily asked him not to come closer. Rory sat to the side, sighing, and saying that it would be a hard road. The protagonist was sitting in a chair, reading a manga. He asked Blista about the barrier above the village. At that time, she was standing in front of him with a large backpack. The girl said that she went to the village to get things about an hour ago, and it seems that the destruction of the barrier bothers them very much. After looking through her luggage, he realized that she really was going to move in with them permanently. Rory noticed that she hadn't really asked their opinion. Noah said that he didn't know there was a barrier above the village. A breathless Sebastian came running up to them, saying that, as expected of the incompetent prince, it was bold to think that he knew anything about the lands he had received. The boy came to hug him again, thanking him for coming to remind him of his worthlessness. The man, trying to push him away, didn't understand why he was so friendly to him, and Rory tried to understand what was wrong with these people. The butler said that the lands were located on the border of a dangerous forest called the Abyssal Forest. The barrier around the village allowed the inhabitants to live in peace. He explained this by pointing everything out on the map. Noah did not understand why anyone would live in such a dangerous place. Lista said that while they were living under the protection of the ancient hero's barrier, everything was fine, but it suddenly began to collapse. Sebastian added that, unfortunately, if this continued, the village would cease to exist. Noya chuckled at the ancient hero. He said that no matter how strong the barrier was, if it was not maintained by magic, it would eventually collapse. Over time, it would simply outlive itself. Those present admired his words. Lista said enthusiastically that this was exactly what she expected from him. He had understood so quickly what had happened to the ancient hero's barrier. Even the court magicians could not figure it out. Noya and Rory looked at each other in bewilderment. Rory chuckled that he had done it again. He had tried to argue that magic was easy, but she had said that he should simply accept that this future was a natural extension of his past. He had been very much opposed to that. Meanwhile, the ancient hero's barrier still stood in the village. The locals gathered together, asking if this man was the new master. He replied that he was pleased to meet them. He was the prince of the kingdom, Noah Carter, and asked about the barrier. They replied that there had been cracks on it before. But due to the attack of the volcanic turtle, part of the barrier was destroyed, and the inhabitants could only watch, because they always relied on it to survive. The protagonist slapped his chest and confidently told them to trust him, as he swears on his blood that he will restore the barrier. Those present were inspired by his words. Rory wondered what he was thinking, because if he wanted to be known as a loser, he shouldn't take on such a responsibility as fixing the barrier. He said that everything was thought out. He said it so confidently, so he could easily fail. If he didn't live up to their expectations, he would immediately fall in their eyes. So she asked him how he was going to do it. Telling her to watch carefully, he stood under the circle and exhaled. A large amount of energy was unfolding around him, causing the air to lift his clothes up. He said that he only needed to put a little bit into his powers. His energy went to the magic circle, and Rory was amazed that it was the power of only one drop. The protagonist directed his hand towards the barrier. He decided that if they were so worried about him, then he would just get rid of him completely. Giant cracks appeared all over his surface. People were horrified that he was broken. The guy said he thought he could fix it. People were horrified at what they would do without the barrier. Some had been living there for generations. Was he really a problem prince? He thought he needed to demonstrate his complete incompetence. He understands that it is bad and will install a new one later. Lista asked everyone to wait because it was just a misunderstanding. She said seriously that he had done it on purpose. The faces of the people present distorted with surprise, and they asked her again. She added that he had said earlier that it was not worth relying on the barrier of the old heroes. The protagonist tried to stop her, but she continued that he was here now and would hold back the monsters from now on. The villagers and Noah were shocked. He tried to deny it, but the people did not listen to him. They decided that the new lord would get rid of the monsters for them. He would not break the barrier for nothing, so he is a very wonderful lord. They gathered around him and began to praise him, and the main character recoiled in horror, not understanding what was wrong with this village. Rory said she thought someone had just become an object of their faith. Whatever he did, it was leading up to this. He countered that it couldn't be that stupid. At that moment, someone screamed and the villager pointed. In the distance, a large number of different monsters appeared, armed with various weapons. They were going to attack the village. People did not understand how they knew so quickly that the barrier was no longer there. So all their attention quickly turned to the gentleman. He wondered what would happen if things continued like this. Rory didn't know what was going on in his head. He said it didn't matter what you said to the villagers. He would run straight into the monsters and let them defeat him. He approached them and sighed loudly. After this, his face became distorted with anger, causing all the monsters present to be horrified and literally crying. After that, they ran away with such speed that dust rose up. The people present were surprised that he rushed at the monsters with such force that they ran away in fear. This is exactly what they expected from him. The main character literally froze in place, unable to understand what was really going on. Rory sighed calmly, saying that she understood everything. She noticed that he used more force than usual to break the barrier. He replied that it was only a little bit. She added that monsters are quite sensitive to magical energy, so they were able to feel its traces. For them, he is extremely dangerous with a huge amount of mana, so they ran away. The guy fell to the ground from the shock that overtook him. Lista said enthusiastically that the frightened monsters would never return to the village. Instead of restoring the barrier, he took it upon himself to drive away all the monsters. The main character literally shook from her words, and she, spreading her arms to the side, standing in front of all the villagers, declared that this was the power of the master. While Noah was trying to resist them, the people had already gathered together, praising the Lord as their savior and a wonderful man. They literally prayed to him. They shouted that they would follow him to the very end, and shouted for everyone to praise their new master. Rory chuckled that now he didn't have a single hater. The shaking boy covered his face with his hand. At the same time, in the kingdom of Gaitan Negan, the king was once again reading the news with irritation. He was informed that the commander of the Tiatan Knights had resigned, and this was only a few days after the departure of the court magician. The knights and mages are gradually resigning, each of them saying the same thing: there is no point in serving in a palace where there is no Lord Noah. So they suggested that it would be better to return the prince back. The king threw his glass on the floor, causing it to break. He then shouted, asking if he was saying that his decision was wrong. He began to sweat in anger. He added that this guy was a complete loser, so he sent him away. There was no way he was wrong. At that moment, a girl entered the room and called out to the king. He looked straight at her. A lady from the Grand Ducal family named Saradea von Graham arrived at the king's castle. The king of the whole country stood up from his throne and looked at the girl walking towards him. The monarch, confused, asked for forgiveness for showing himself in such an unsightly light, and asked what exactly the lady wanted, since the meeting dedicated to discussing the wedding was not to take place anytime soon. The girl closed her eyes and said that this was exactly what she wanted to talk about and wanted to break off the engagement. The king rebelled and asked the lady why she wanted it that way. The Graham family was one of the great ducal dynasties, and the king wanted to keep them close to the kingdom for as long as possible. Saradea, adjusting her hair, replied that she was supposed to be engaged to the seventh prince of Noah. The king declared that he had banished his son, and added that if it was about her, why shouldn't she marry Prince Dag? The girl smiled and humbly replied that she had no such desire. The king's face darkened, and the girl again replied that she had only agreed to be engaged to Prince Noah, but right now he had been expelled from the kingdom, and therefore she had no reason to maintain the engagement. The girl left the audience reception room when suddenly a male voice called out to her from behind, and Saradea, without turning around, recognized the voice. The girl stopped while the sixth Prince Dag stood behind her. Out of breath, the prince asked the girl to wait and did not believe in the break in the engagement, asking Saradea if her words were true. Saradea looked at the boy and replied that her heart remained loyal to Noah and had no desire to devote herself to Doug. The young man was horrified and extended his hand, refusing to believe these words, fussily and stutteringly asking her to wait and think it over again. Doug knew that Sarah was the best match of the ducal heiresses, and he had never had a girlfriend, but Noah was standing in his way with this engagement, so he believed that now he could finally get married. Doug's gaze was crazy and he tried to smile at the girl, asking her to wait with the decision while she was at a loss from the prince's behavior. Doug tried to touch the girl, but she hid his hand with her own with all the pent-up anger. Sarah replied with a serious expression that she would not allow a useless man like him to lay a finger on her, and it would be better for her to cut her throat and die than to marry such a man. The girl turned away again and continued walking forward while the guy fell to his knees and looked after the girl. The prince grabbed his head in confusion and did not understand why everyone around him was only talking about his younger brother and did not understand what was so special about Noah. The girl, without turning her head, looked at the guy and thought that since he didn't understand this, that's why he was a cabbage roll. Neither the king nor the sixth prince understood how it had come to this, and were upset and angry at the seventh prince, while Noah himself fled with his familiar Rory in the form of a cat. The main character was sitting at his desk in his office and didn't understand why everything in this world had a hidden meaning, lying face down on the table and covered with documents. Rory, in human form, answered the guy why he shouldn't just give up and shrugged. The girl added that his so-called acts of irresponsibility always end with him getting the title of first in everything, and began to list how the guy discovered a spy in the mine of the mansion employees, and how the monsters ran away as soon as they saw the guy. Noah looked at his hands in horror and didn't understand why this was happening. Rory replied in confusion that it was because the main character was an idiot. The girl sat down on the sofa and, raising her finger, replied that, firstly, it would be enough to simply say that the young man was uneducated. The main character replied that this option was in third place, and the girl got angry. I don't understand what's going on in the guy's head. Noah started to explain that instead of being the one who immediately tells you that you can't do anything, he wants to be the one who says that he can do anything and it will be easy as pie, but then screws up, because that will make him look even worse. While the guy was looking out the window, the girl replied that since everything he did was a little different in this regard, she noticed how the leaf began to fall and gasped. Rory picked up the piece of paper from the floor and asked what it was. Without turning around, the main character replied that there was some heresy that Sebastian had sent. The girl looked at the notes and replied that it was the village reconstruction project, and grinned. Rory said that they want to restore everything that the monsters destroyed after the barrier collapsed. We don't have enough male strength to cope, and will it be enough if the guy uses repair magic? The guy was horrified and smiling, answered that they were crazy because if he restores everything, the load will increase several times. Rory noted that the young man is lazy, as always. Noah answered that there is not a single person who does not like the lack of work. The main character approached the girl and replied, taking the document, that he could use it, and smiled. The guy waved his hand at the girl, saying that he needed to go out, and the girl asked in surprise if he was going to take on this request. The young man turned to her and replied that it was a secret for now. The girl's face darkened, and she had a bad feeling about this. The carriage moved forward while the main characters sat in them. Rory said that the city's exhibition was limited by the lack of labor and that hiring workers from a private guild would be enough to solve the problem. Noah had read Japanese comics and said that she was right. The girl added that Carter's lands did not have that much money, and the guy again agreed with her. The familiar asked if it was possible to gather people without magic or money, and if the boy was going to use restorative magic or return to the capital asking for help. The main character replied that if he hired someone from the capital, it would only raise his reputation. The girl asked me what he was going to do then. The guy, thinking, replied that he was thinking about it. In the forest around the strip, bandits with weapons gathered and surrounded the heroes. Rory noticed the cart stop and asked about it. I think that's what scared the horse. The girl answered the main character that she would go and see what was happening outside. As soon as Rory got out of the cart, a man held a knife to her throat and told her not to move. The men tied up the heroes while they thought that these guys were real robbers. The main characters were silent while the men said that they were well dressed and it seemed to them that they would be able to get some money today. Rory looked at the guy and asked what they should do, to which she replied that these men quickly fell for his familiar and everything turned out to be easier than he thought. The girl did not believe what was happening and asked the guy what exactly he had planned. The protagonist replied that he was going to take them with him so that they could do all the work for them in the most terrible way possible. The girl smiled and was confused, while the robbers, hearing this, were outraged by the guy's proposal. One of the bandits turned to their leader, to which he snapped and asked what he wanted. The man replied that the girl was very beautiful and looked at Rory with cat ears. The robber agreed with his comrade and began to scold the main character. I think that he bought this sweet girl for fabulous money and blushed with his comrades. Rory also blushed and became indignant while the guy looked at her and laughed. The leader of the bandits pointed at the heroes and ordered them to take everything valuable along with the girl, to which they agreed and moved forward. Rory was at a loss. The leader of the bandits picked up the girl in his arms while she was surprised. Rory was embarrassed and whispered to the main character what she should do, because now she would take on her real form and kill them all if he did nothing. The leader of the bandits ordered the girl to sit quietly because they would leave her alive, to which she again became indignant. The protagonist untied his hands, folded his fingers so that he could snap, and responded with a snap on the forehead. The force of the finger strike was so strong that the bandit leader and the girl were lifted into the air, which shocked his subordinates. Fellow bandits called out to the leader as he fell from the sky. While everyone was distracted by the fall of their leader, Noah caught Rory. The protagonist did not show his face, saying that they were idiots and asking what they planned to do with Rory after they took her. The girl blushed again and called out to the main character. Well, the guy interrupted her, calling her bandits fools. The protagonist was outraged and took that they were going to drag his Rory away with disgusting plans just like in the comics he read. The girl became indignant and asked why there were always idiots around her. Noah let the girl go to the ground and scratched the back of his head, replying that the show was over while the bandits were about to attack him. The main character smiled and said that if they didn't want to die, he could only advise them to behave quietly. Rory added that that's what the bandits themselves usually say. But the bandits were not stopped by his statement, and, attacking, they replied that they would never retreat after something like that. The main character pounced on them with a rope and hit them in certain parts of the body. Moving forward, the guy managed to tie them up while they didn't even understand what was happening and were surprised. The bandits asked in amazement who exactly was in front of them, to which the main character only turned around and looked at them and smiled. Returning to the estate, Sebastian asked in confusion what it was. Before the man's eyes were 6 men tied up and sitting on the grass. Noah replied with a smile that Sebastian needed workers to rebuild the village, and his wonderful master brought them. Raising his finger up, the main character replied that they would do anything, moreover, absolutely free of charge, looking at the bandits. The robbers were confused. Noah grabbed the bandit leader by the shoulder and told Sebastian that he trusted the process of building the village to these people, which greatly surprised the bandit. Sebastian was outraged and confused, as was Lista, who was standing next to the man. Sebastian responded indignantly that it was unthinkable to hire such uncontrollable people as workers, and also to trust them with restoring the body of the village, because they don't even know how they will behave. The protagonist turned to the man. Noah asked if the man wanted to give up the workers he had personally selected, because he believed that they would be able to do everything right, which surprised the robbers. Sebastian fell silent, and Lista turned to her master with a smile and was delighted. The young man believed that these guys would help lower his reputation and happily exhaled the accumulated tension. Suddenly, the main character noticed how the robbers began to cry and turned to them. The bandits wiped away tears of happiness and wet noses from bodily fluids and believed that before them was a very wonderful person. Noah didn't understand this gesture and grinned, forcing a smile. The bandit leader happily declared that it was very generous to give a chance to people like them and called the main character a master. The guy looked at the bandit in confusion, while they, folding their hands over their hearts, answered that they had become bandits not out of their own desire, but because they had lost their jobs and families. They were driven away from everywhere, so they had no money for food. The bandit thanked his master and replied that the chairman of the private company Panther accepted their request. Noah shouted back at him, while Rory stated that these guys were big people in town, and Sebastian added that if you think about it, everything was going well. Sebastian began to talk out loud about what he had heard about highly skilled workers from a private guild being arrested because of a corrupt duke, and suggested that Mr. Noah might have known who they were in advance, to which the young man refused. The Panther leader happily told the boys to put down their knives and start picking up the nails, because this was their first decent job. The men raised their hands in the air with joyful cries, while Noah and Rory looked at the boys in confusion and dismay. The protagonist turned away and grabbed his face, realizing that his plan had failed, while the girl looked at the young man with confusion. Sebastian noted that Noah was able to deal with the bandits and find workers at once. Suddenly, the Duke came to his senses and replied that there were plenty of other problems in those mountains, and the main character would definitely not be able to cope with them so easily. Suddenly, the gates swung open, and the horse and cart drove into the courtyard. The Stripes, together with the uninvited guests, moved straight towards the heroes. Noah, along with Rory, was very surprised and did not understand what was happening. Suddenly, a female voice came from the stopped carriage, apologizing for the sudden visit. The girl came out of the strip and replied that they had come to help the main character and went forward. The young man did not understand why and asked where they were from. Saralea, along with Teta and Reisa, appeared before the protagonist, and one of the girls replied that they hadn't seen each other for a long time, turning to Noah. The main character didn't understand and suggested asking the girls where they were from. The guy was confused until Lista asked the gentleman who all these people were. The protagonist replied that they were acquaintances from the royal palace. The commander of the Royal Knights Squad, Teta, replied that it was a great honor for her to meet Mr. Noah again, adding that she heard how he helped the locals who were suffering from monsters and became a true master of his lands, which made the girl's eyes light up. The girl happily added that she was very much delighted with the spirit of the main character and dedicated her power to him. Noah did not understand and asked how exactly the conversation had gone in this direction. The instructor of the court magicians division, Reza, told her partner that they had not seen each other for a long time and added that the mistress of shadows was at his service, adjusting the bandage on her right eye. Noah turned to Reza in the hall and asked her what she was doing in such a remote place because she didn't like life in nature. The girl began to answer, embarrassed. Reza replied that since her partner was here, she too suddenly became embarrassed by her own words. The girl paraphrased, saying that she was brought here by a god in the shadows to serve her soulmate. The protagonist confusedly agreed, while Rory replied that the knight with muscles instead of brains and the witch obsessed with the guy were increasingly giving the guy problems. Saradea began to say that she had met the girls on her way here and thought that such strong people could be very useful, and so she took them with her. The girl happily greeted the guy again. They say that they haven't seen each other for a long time. The main character began to stutter and agreed with Sarah, thinking that she was the culprit of the new guests. The girl remembered how she was called an acquaintance and added that it was because they did not have time to get married and dedicate their lives to each other. Lista was very surprised by such a statement, while Sebastian was surprised and thoughtful, and only Noah grabbed his head in confusion and bewilderment. Sebastian reminded that the lady with the right is the heiress of one of the most influential ducal houses, the most powerful, famous knight in the city and instructor of court magicians in the land of Carter. Lista happily stated that, as expected of Mr. Noah, he was able to attract such influential people to his side. The protagonist asked with a confused smile why this was happening, while Rory replied that she was starting to think that "Sir, Noah is the best" was starting to stick on people's lips. Noah told the boys to go home, because this is not the place where the Duke's daughter or other famous people should be. Rory noted that this was the Prince of the Kingdom talking about it. Theta replied that this was precisely why they couldn't leave, because they wanted to be useful to Noah. Reza laughed and said that as long as Noah was their idol, they would be by his side. Sarah stated that she, the Night Lady and the Mage Lady were in agreement on this, so we came together to help the main character. Rory replied that here was another person with pumped-up charisma and asked what Noah would do. The guy understood that he had no choice and began to speak. Noah happily replied that it was time for a duel, while Rory couldn't figure out what the guy was thinking. The familiar asked what this was for, to which the young man replied that it didn't matter what exactly happened, these guys would still stay here. The protagonist happily stated that they therefore had to change the plan. The young man thought about how he could show how talentless he really was. Rory responded in shock that the boy's life had taught him nothing. Noah replied that if he lost the duel, they would quickly lose interest, and the locals' requests would immediately come to naught because they would see the guy's talented opponents, not himself. Rory understood his plan. The girl asked if they could at least hurt him physically or mentally. The protagonist chuckled and replied that it would be quite difficult for them, and so he decided to introduce some rules. 2 hours later, people gathered in the city and began to talk about the gentleman who was going to compete with the court magician and the commander of the Royal Knights, to which followed the statement that 2 against 1 seemed unfair. No one noticed that the locals had gathered rather quickly and sarcastically noted that they had nothing to do. Sarah said that she would be the judge because it was an honor for her, Sarah Day Von Graham, to hold this role. The girl began to say that the rules are simple and the participant will have to hunt monsters in the unknown forest after the time has passed. They must return back with the prey. The winner will be the one who defeats the strongest monster. If the participant returns empty-handed, he will be disqualified. The girls began preparing for the hunt, while the guy indifferently scratched the back of his head and Rory sat on his shoulder in the form of a cat. The start of the duel was announced, and the girls, together with the main character, moved into the forest. The boy asked his familiar why she was in cat form again. Rory replied that there were too many people, and it irritated her. Suddenly, a girl grabbed the microphone and was about to start speaking. Lista introduced herself as a commentator and added that she would voice everything that people saw. The girl sat at the top of the tower to observe, while the guy sarcastically asked her what she was doing there. Lista noticed a huge noise in the forest and a beam of light appearing, and began to comment on how it was breaking out ahead of them, interrupting the sentence. The girl added that the knight commander Teta walked ahead. Teta stated that as a knight, she had no idea why the prince had started the duel, but she was going to give it her all and rushed forward towards the monster in the form of a huge snake. With a sharp movement of the ball, the girl was able to cut the monster down without looking back. Lista began to comment on how she was able to amazingly grow a monster in two with one swing. Reza noted that I expected this from someone who put strength first, but the one who really had the dignity to contact the prince was only her. The girl Poppy stood opposite the same monster. Reza ordered everyone to look at the dark power of the witch and began to cast a spell with the staff. The girl cast the spell, Maximum Power Star Strike, and the snake exploded. The small explosion was followed by a huge explosion with a loud sound. The people were very surprised by such power, while Lista commented that a barrier was put up to protect everyone from the blow, as expected from Lady Raisa. Noah was walking away from everyone and saw the explosion. He replied that it was pretty good and they were holding up well, so it was time for him to start. Lista noticed the protagonist's movement and replied that Mr. Noah had finally set off on his journey. The girl began to comment that she saw a moving figure and asked to pay attention because their handsome man, the master, was standing there. Noah was embarrassed by this statement and asked who allowed Lista to take the commentator's place. The main character understood and said that he couldn't do anything when so much attention was focused on him. The young man jumped into the abyss and said that we should try to go here. Lifa lost her master and began to comment that he had disappeared and began to call out to Prince Noah. The young man was glad that he was finally able to tear himself away from the commentator. Rory asked what exactly the protagonist wanted to do to show his weakness. Noah reminded him of the conditions for victory and said that it was very simple. The guy replied that they would be on the small stuff and taking the ball, like in Pokemon. He replied that the little slime would come out because he calls it. Rory, worried, answered that she hoped that they would come across them because somewhere here at the foot they should be. The young man answered that the usual ones can be found anywhere. The main character looked down and noticed something. They say that when you remember the sun, here is a ray. There was a slime lying on the grass, and the guy replied that here it was, and they found it. The protagonist picked up the slime and replied that he was so frail, asking to look at him while he squeaked. Rory said in surprise that this slime was strange because it was golden and sparkly. Noah didn't understand her and replied that when he was a swordsman, slimes could be of completely different colors. The familiar was shocked by such a statement. Rory asked what the guy was going to do next, since it looked like he was going to fight him. The main character replied that he had already defeated him and the slime went to heaven, which surprised the girl. The guy explained that it was instant death magic and asked why it was necessary to fight if it was possible to do everything at once and without unnecessary damage. Rory repeated the hero's phrase about instant death magic in horror and asked if it was the same ancient shadow magic. The cat girl replied that no one in this world could use such spells. The boy said that in the past it was mandatory to learn. Rory covered her left eye and sighed, replying that the guy had found the monster, but what was he going to do next? The protagonist replied that he thought that Tata and Reyes had no time for him now, and there was no one here, and Lista's announcement was not heard, so he could sleep and asked to wake him up later. The young man lay down on his cloak, which made the familiar surprised by the boy's calmness. Rory shuddered and thoughtfully said that taking a nap in an unknown forest that smelled of death a mile away was very strange and like the guy himself. A few hours later, the main character returned to people. Lista noticed her master. The citizens also noticed the return of their master and called out to the Lord on his return. Lista began to cry and said that she was very worried about her master. The young man tried to calm her down and apologized. They say that he was to blame. The main character replied that he had completely forgotten himself and lost track of time while he was hunting. Rory lay on the boy's shoulder and thought that now he would ask him what kind of monster he had defeated, and then he would answer that it was a slime. Noah apologized for the delay and asked if the girls were back. The girls stood with the mountain of monsters behind them until Tata agreed with the guy and replied that they had returned a couple of minutes ago. Tata replied that she had killed 15 ancient dragons. Reza said that she had 5 ancient dragons, having accidentally incinerated 2 or 4. Rory noticed that they were behind the people, cracking dragons like nuts because the dragons were SS different, and therefore she had no idea what level of hunter these girls were. Sarah approached the main character with a smile and said that now it was his turn to show the pig the monster he had defeated. The boy closed his eyes and stuck his hand into the inner edge of the platforms, telling Sarah that the monster he had defeated was a slime. The guy showed a small, dead, golden slime. Everyone around began to crowd around the little monster and look at him. People kept looking at the spreading slime and asked if it was slime. Noah was mentally happy and thought that everything was right because he was the only one who returned with one single little slime, and now he was undoubtedly a terrible lord. People began to say that the gentleman had only defeated one slime, although they were surprised at the shine of the slime because so much time had passed, it still sparkled. Suddenly, Sarah came to her senses and asked to wait. They say it was the same one. The girl added that, according to rumors, the insatiable king lives in an unknown forest, and in front of them now was this king of slimes. The villagers retreated back, without a doubt, believed the girl that this was the same legendary monster. Teta and Ryasa began to say that in short, the miracle monster, although it was small, its price exceeded 5 ancient dragons, and they dragged the king of gluttony. Sarah hugged the main character and declared that in the name of her family she proclaimed Prince Noah the winner, while the guy himself was shocked. The main character, almost in tears, did not understand why everything always turned out this way. Leaf, with burning eyes, turned to the Lady Knight. The Lady Mage says that they were so strong, but could not defeat so easily, because it was obvious that the Master was the only one worthy of ruling these lands. The people raised their hands in joy, speaking as expected from their lord. Rory noted that this ending was very obvious, while the guy was shaking in confusion and replied that he did it again. It was a normal day at the Kartar estate. The Duke was walking around the estate while Lista was cleaning the windows. Teta and Reza, along with the guards, trained with the ball and in witchcraft. Sarah sat and smiled as she read a book. The main character was sleeping at his workplace, sitting at the table. Rory, in the form of a cat, slept next to the main character and, opening one eye, noticed that there was a lot of activity around Noah. And as she fell asleep, she began to remember the story of how she first met him. The archive is a place hidden in another dimension where all the information of the world is stored, starting from its very foundation, and only sages blessed by goddesses can get to this place, but even they cannot stay here for long. The place had been guarded by Rory the White Dragon and had been filled with strangers for as long as she could remember. But one day, while the White Dragon was sleeping, a portal appeared. A little boy entered this world through a portal. The boy was surprised when he got into the library and wondered if the books would get wet in the open air, and suddenly noticed someone's presence. A huge white dragon named Rory appeared behind the guy. The boy was Noah, about 6 years old, and he said the dragon was very cute. Rory was surprised that the child was in the archives. The dragon in all his might stood before the boy and addressed him, asking him to identify himself. Noah looked at the dragon while Rory thought about who this child was, and no matter how much he looked like a sage and blessed by the goddess, he didn't look like one, so she thought it was an intruder. The dragon's mood changed, and she replied that she needed to destroy the intruder, as that was the mission of the demon guardians of the Forbidden Archives. Rory opened her mouth in preparation to use magic. Taking off, the dragon burped flames straight at the guy with the desire to kill. Fire magic turned nature around and sent books flying. The dragon descended to earth again, thinking that she was a demon named Rory, one of the 7 created by the goddess. Her ability is instant regeneration, all thanks to the rapid growth of cells, allowing her body to remain whole and unharmed. Noah wasn't scared, he just winced when dust got into his mouth. This sight greatly surprised the dragon. She didn't seem to understand that her magic hadn't left a trace on him, and how this little guy had survived her blow without receiving a scratch. The boy crouched down on the ground as the dragon began to take off. Noah looked at the dead flower and healed it again. I think it was a very strange magic, similar to the power of destruction and meeting at the same time, stretching his finger up. The guy, having managed to repeat the dragon's magic, asked if he was doing it right. Rory was amazed while the guy said that, if you think about it, it even looks boring. He asked angrily who the guy was. The main character replied that when you ask a person their name, you should first introduce yourself, as his grandmother told him. The dragon, confused, began to ask if he was afraid of her. Noah replied that he had just been able to replicate her magic, so he didn't see what he had to be afraid of. Rory understood, because it seemed true, but she was still a dragon. Rory began to remember that before she became the guardian of the archives, she lived like a god and people were afraid of her. People then revered her and were wary of her. That's why seeing such a guy was new to her. The dragon replied that her name was Rory and that she was the demon who protected this place. The boy replied that his name was Noah and that he was the 7th prince. Rory asked how the guy got there. to which he replied that it was completely by accident. Noah said that he was leaning over the castle when he saw a dimensional rift, so he decided to explore it, which is how he ended up here. Rory was very surprised and asked how he got into the dimensional rift. The dragon understood that since the boy had passed through a spatial rift, he was probably from another world, and, in general, he could die in it. Suddenly, the boy gasped. Noah noticed that there were a lot of rare books here, looking ahead at the shelves. The main character took one of the books. Rory yelled at the boy to not touch the books with his dirty little hands, calling him a little idiot. The dragon knew that the meaning of her existence was security technology, and as the one protecting this place, she could not allow the guy to touch them. Rory flew in front of the guy and was about to destroy the man by attacking him with magic. The main character immediately dodged the attack. Noah started jumping on the bookcases, and the dragon stopped. The protagonist noticed how the barrier began to appear. Noah asked her to be careful because she herself could damage her beloved books. Rory replied that the books were protected by her magic, and instead of worrying about them, he should worry about himself. The protagonist chuckled and replied that he was, making it clear that they were protected. The young man replied that it meant that one could try something while inside the dragon's magic. Noah tore apart the ball he was in. Rory was very surprised by what the guy could do. The main character started throwing fireballs. While the dragon was dodging, fireballs hit the bookcases. The barrier placed on the dragon began to crack, and Rory noticed it. The guy noted that books can't be touched so easily. The protagonist spread his arms and replied that it was time to finish this before the dragon attacked from behind. Suddenly, a huge circle with pentagrams appeared in front of Rory's face. Rory was surprised by this, while the guy just smiled forgiveness. The main character replied that he didn't really care what kind of book demon she was, because he simply asked her not to interfere with his quiet life. Noah placed a triple seal on the dragon. Suddenly, Rory, in the form of a girl with cat ears, fell from the sky into the archive. Rory didn't understand what it was, and asked the guy. The girl called him an idiot and asked what he was wearing and why she was in such a small body. The protagonist replied that he had sealed all of her power, pointing to the cover of a Japanese comic book with a girl who was a copy of Rory. The girl replied that it was simply impossible for such a kid to go and seal the powers of a high-ranking demon, and who the hell was he anyway? The protagonist replied that he had told her his name earlier. The young man replied with a smile on his face that he was the seventh prince of Noah. Noah returned to the archives through the portal and informally called Rory over. The girl angrily replied that he came again, saying that this was a place where strangers were forbidden to come, and sat on top of the closet. The main character grinned and replied that if he had once been somewhere, he could easily return using teleportation magic. The girl noted that such magic was of a high rank, but the guy did not believe her. The boy sat next to the girl and read a Japanese comic, saying that it was amazing and that this thing called manga was very interesting. The girl noted that this was true and that the archives contained books from completely different realities. Rory was worried that he would read forbidden books, but he comes to read manga and relax, adding that the boy had taste. The young man closed the manga and turned to the girl. The protagonist smiled and asked if the girl had anything she could recommend to him for respect. Rory was delighted and took 2 books. They say they are very good. A little later, the girl brought a few more books and replied that these were all very wonderful. The main character was delighted and asked if he could take them with him. Without waiting for an answer, the guy opened a portal to his world and said goodbye to the girl. Rory was a little upset, but said goodbye to the guy. But the girl was very glad that he would come here again. For her, such an informal speech was not like her previous one. Rory turned to the guy. They say that he ruined her entire book, pointing to the cover, which was covered in greasy stains. The girl was furious and looked at the guy as he ate and read books. They say you can't eat with books in your hands. Noah apologized and justified himself by saying that he had made a mess and hadn't noticed, but after cleaning it with magic, he replied that it was now as good as new. Noah cried. They say that this book was very touching. Rory sat next to him and looked at him with interest. The girl looked at the cover and replied that she liked it too, and recommended a new book by the same author. The protagonist noted that the role had excellent taste. After some time, the main characters began to scold and insult each other due to differences in taste. Noah, answer that. This book is better by this author, pointing to the comic. Rory replied that he was completely crazy and had terrible taste. The guy asked what she was talking about and said that these were his top 3 mangas, showing 3 books. The girl agreed and said that there was something to it, but the guy asked to show her his favorite mangas. Rory happily showed his 3 manga and the guy realized that he was a loser. The main character, Wilted, said that he was defeated, and the girl proudly stood in a pose of a winner and exhaled. Rory replied that the books she had picked were the best. The guy was ready to argue with her and replied that his books were no worse. The guy closed the book and replied that it was already late and it was time for him to go home. The girl became sad and looked at the guy, but he noticed and you asked what was wrong. The girl was upset and asked if the guy could have stayed a little longer. The young man replied that even if she asked for it, he still wouldn't be able to stay because his older sister Mason would start counting the minutes. The girl understood him. The main character turns to the girl. Noah asked if she wanted to get out of here. The guy extended his hand to the girl and with a smile suggested that they leave together. Roll looked at him, upset, and replied that it was impossible because she was the guardian of this place. The protagonist replied that there was no magic holding her here and no one could get here except him, and he could use magic as an alarm signal. The young man noted that there was no point in defending the archive alone. Rory hesitated, thinking about the world outside the archives. The girl was afraid of the outside world because before she became a guardian, she lived in it and was a creature revered by people. But Rory remembered how that respect quickly turned to general hostility and she became everyone's enemy. She tried to run away, but people still scared her with how quickly they could hate something. So Rory became the guardian of the archives because there was no longer anything to fear, and she found peace there. The girl thought that she would never leave this place again, because if she stayed, people would no longer reject her. While Rory was lost in her thoughts, the guy interrupted her and asked again. The girl opened her mouth and tried to say something, but she couldn't and got angry. Rory screamed and ordered him to shut up to himself, not to pretend to be unknown, because he was only a man. Noah looked at her. She said that she was a demon, the strongest of those created by the goddess, and a man like him could not understand her. Rory added that she hated him and ordered him to get out of there and never come back. Although the girl understood that it was a lie, she cried and blushed. The guy turned away from the girl and replied that he would do as she said. The main character went into the portal, and the girl only managed to gasp, holding out her hand to him. Rory lowered her hand. I understand that it was a mistake, and she knows it perfectly well herself. Suddenly, the girl started crying, and she herself did not understand why she was in tears. After that incident, no one came to the archives anymore. Rory sat sadly alone by the bookcase. Suddenly, the girl heard someone's feet stamping. Rory was delighted by the noise from the depths of the archives and began calling out to Noah. The girl was delighted by the noise and quickly stood up, saying that he had finally returned. Rory knew she needed to apologize for what had happened, and she would have been willing to leave this place with him, continuing to run forward. The girl stopped by a tree and noticed a strange figure trying to call out to her friend. But instead of Noah, it was not a stranger who ended up in the archive, but a monster who tried to take the forbidden books. The monster with tentacles instead of hands said that it was magnificent, and the archives containing all the world's information were finally in his hands. Rory was angry and confused, asking who he was and how he got here. The monster noticed her and noted that she was a local guard. The monster added that she was an idiot and didn't even know that the barrier on the ground had weakened. The girl realized with surprise and remembered that her powers were sealed by Noah. The monster asked with insight if she could protect the archives in this form. The girl did not succumb to provocation and ordered him to move away from the books because he was a lowly offspring. The monster responded menacingly that she should move because she was a useless guardian. With his tentacles, he lifted the girl, captured her, and immobilized her. The monster hung the girl on a tree while she was struggling and asked what it was, ordering her to let go. The monster ordered her to be silent and watch quietly as he absorbed all the knowledge of the world. The girl was saddened by her hopeless situation and thought that if only she had not been sealed, but she quickly came to her senses. The monster took one of the manga and the girl ordered him not to touch this book. The monster looked at her and at the book, thinking what it was, and realized that it was manga. The monster began throwing out these books one by one, saying that this is not hidden knowledge, and did not understand why the manga was in the place where all the works of the world are collected, adding that only idiots read such things. The monster was angry and shouted that this was not what he was looking for. He wanted to find grimoires about extending his own limits and magic capable of subjugating an entire country, and not this tasty reading material, instead of which we on Earth are not on the shelves. The girl replied in confusion that it was not like that, and the man asked again what she had said. Rory started crying and replied that mangas are the best books to relax and unwind with someone. All those long days in the archives, it wasn't the forbidden books and grimoires that calmed her down. It was the mangas and novels that connected her with Noah. The girl ordered to never talk about manga like that again and to apologize and ask forgiveness from the authors too. The monster became angry and replied that he would rather kill her and rushed to attack. The monster laughed even harder with its tentacles at the girl and tried to strangle her. Rory was at her wit's end and thought of Noah, asking him to save her. The monster only wished her death. Suddenly, a portal appeared. Noah emerged from the portal and cut down the monster. The monster did not understand who it was that came to the archives, and Noah replied that it was teleportation magic. With his last breath, the monster replied that he did not know about such magic as teleportation. Having cut the last tentacles, the guy grabbed Rory, who was falling down, and caught her, asking if she was okay. The main character let the girl go to the ground, and she replied that he came to save her, but the guy was ready to argue that it was just a coincidence. Noah began to explain that he had simply decided to take a break from reading the mana, so he hadn't come to her for a while, and pointing to the book, told her to look at what he had done. The guy replied that manga are still the best books, and the girl was touched. The main character looked at her and asked what happened. Rory, interrupting him, threw herself into his arms and called out to him. The girl began to explain that because he suddenly disappeared, she thought that he would not return and that she would not see him again. The guy asked her not to worry and stroked her head. She began to explain that the reason he couldn't get through was because he was traveling with the family and he didn't have much choice to refuse. The girl, you asked in amazement? The young man added that he wanted to refuse and continue reading, but he was told that he had no choice, and suddenly he remembered, reaching into his inside pocket. Noah offered to take a look and pulled out a tape from there. The main character tied a bow on the girl's uniform and replied that he thought about how it would suit her, which is why he bought it. The girl was very happy, and the guy explained that it was a gift. The young man smiled and responded with gratitude for protecting the manga. Rory was moved again and began to cry, blushing. The girl hugged the main character again, while he did not understand what was happening. Rory made up her mind and replied that she would go with the guy to the outside world. The main character was delighted and agreed. Noah added that he would set up a barrier here to make sure no more intruders showed up, and if an otherworldly one got in here, he would sense it, so there shouldn't be any problems. The girl asked in confusion whether it would be okay for her to go with him. The main character thought for a moment and replied that the girl had recommended him a lot of good manga, and he still hadn't asked her for anything in return. The young man replied that in exchange for her recommendations, he would also show her many interesting things. Rory agreed with him. They say that she will definitely learn a lot with him, and they went through the portal together. So the demon keeper of the archive became the assistant of the unstressed prince. Returning to the present, Noah was awakened by Lista's voice distracting him. The girl ran to the gentleman and shouted that they had discovered a precious vein on their territory, which made the guy very surprised and choked. The main character was upset and asked why this was happening because he didn't even do anything this time. Lista added that the last time he threw a fireball at the volcano turtle, it also hit the bloodbear's den. Noah was shocked and said that it was the butterfly effect because the chances of that happening were 0. Rory woke up to the sound of screams and noticed that he was still being a fool, thinking that she wanted him to show her even more interesting things. So the girl decides to remember the past. She tells that during the introduction, she and Noah, having dealt with the volcanic turtle with the help of a fire volley, accidentally destroyed the nest of the bloody bear and discovered expensive ore. The girl beams and says that in the very depths, where no one would even think of taking it, they found a huge mithril vein. The main character loudly announces that this time even he did nothing. The cat, lying on the table, asks about the fact that isn't mithril rare. If they sell it, they can become a very rich territory. The man in shock asks if this is serious. He heard what is happening. Suddenly, he turns to Sebastian and tells him that they must definitely take advantage of this, because recently there have been many new residents in the city, and with all of them, their supplies are quickly depleted. The main character asks the man in surprise why people go to such a remote place. The cat shrugs, and the man wants to say something. He reports that it is actually Prince Noah's followers who are flocking here from all over the world after word got out that he is here. By the way, it is Lista who is calling people. Lista will do everything, even on weekends, to make sure everyone knows what a wonderful gentleman he is. The main character is shocked by this. The man confidently declares that now, in the ranking of the most desirable places to live, Carter Land is in first place, and whether the vein has solved their main problem. The guy turns to him, but he does not stop. He loudly says that it was the townspeople who found their ore, not them, and therefore it is not their merit. The main character in shock asks about the fact that everything was like that. The protagonist abruptly hugs the man and tells Sebastian that he is the only one who understands him. The man pushes him away and says that in his place he would keep quiet about the mithril vein. The cat asks why keep it a secret. The cat tells that the young girl Sarah is the daughter of the Minister of Finance. If she has a hand in selling the ore, its price will skyrocket. The main character says that this is such a horror for his image of a blockhead. The cat asks if it is not wonderful if she is already expensive. The cat says that he can't hide it forever. Does he understand that? The main character sighs and says that this vein still needs to be removed from here immediately. This man is the only one who supported him. He turns to Sebastian and he says that he is at his service. The protagonist orders Sebastian to call him a merchant, who absolutely cannot be trusted. He sits idly by. A few days later, a carriage approaches them and stops, and the main character smiles and realizes that he thinks he is here. He looks out the window and says that for some reason Carter's property is getting too much attention. The cat says that it is his fault. The main character says with a smile that in the end they even found a mithril vein here, so this merchant simply has to cheat them when selling the ore. The cat laughs. If he gets outdone by some evil merchant, his reputation will go to hell. He's been used, left with nothing. He'll definitely earn the status of a dumb lord. He represents how people discussed him in a bad context. The cat says that if such an impudent merchant could exist, the protagonist asked Sabas to call the one with the worst reputation. A bad reputation does not come from an honest approach to business. The main character with a smile says that now he will finally appear before him. He is completely confident in him. The cat awkwardly tells the guy that he hasn't even seen him. Then the door opens, and Sebastian comes in, telling the protagonist that he has brought the one he asked for. Noah stands in front of him and listens. The man points to someone in a hood and a burqa and says that she has a very specific appearance, so let the protagonist be careful. Noah asks what he means. The merchant says that he is pleased to meet them. He takes off his hood. There appears a goblin, she says her name, Sabrina Ekiguya. All three people in the room and the cat are shocked when they realize that she is a goblin. Sebastian reports that he has studied the reputation of many of the country's merchants, and that this is the closest to what Mr. Noah asked me to find. The cat asks with interest why the monster works for the merchants. This is quite good. The main character shows a positive sign and, with a smile, announces that she is hired. Everyone is shocked by this news, even the merchant herself. He approaches the goblin and grabs her hands, asking if she is Sabrina Ekiguya. He asks her to cooperate with him. She has such a name, he doesn't know why, but it sounds very villainous. The cat asks the protagonist to wait, because it is a goblin. The protagonist tells her that she is a dragon, and what now? He says that appearance is absolutely unimportant. What matters is how incorruptible a merchant she is. They remain silent for a while, and suddenly Sabrina Ekligaya begins to cry and shake her hands in front of her. The protagonist asks the merchant what happened. She says that since she became like this is the first time she hears such words, so she is very happy about it. The cat asks with interest if she has become like that. The protagonist understands this with a smile and says that it must be incredibly difficult. Sabrina clenches her fist and confidently says that she will try hard for such a kind person as Noah. The protagonist hopes for her and also thinks that he will fail. Suddenly, he remembers something. The main character hands the goblin a cross and says that it is a sign of their friendship. He gives it to her. Sabrina accepts the gift and sincerely thanks the guy. Kat asks what he just gave her, not that she objects. Noah admits that it's some kind of exorcism stuff. The protagonist says that he doesn't want anything to happen while Ikiguya is here. If some traveler kills her, all his plans will go down the drain. The cat scoffs and thinks about the thing Noah just gave her. The cat understands that this object looks like a holy relic. The goblin joyfully holds the cross in his hand. After a while, the The cat silently watches as someone asks in shock what it is. The main character, spreading his arms, asks people what this absurdly huge mountain of gold is, after which the world economy will collapse. Everyone stands in front of him and listens to his emotions. Sebastian reports that this is the money that Ekiguya brought them. The sale of the mithril vein was a huge success for them. The main character in shock asks the man what he is talking about. Let him drive Ekiguyu. The man awkwardly begins to report something. He says that Ekiguya is already here. A young girl with a burden comes out from behind him and reports that it is she, Sabern Ekiguya. It's actually a guy, and everyone is shocked by it. Everyone screams in shock. The cat asks if he has changed that much. Sabern says that yes, it is true, he was a little late with the explanations. After putting on the necklace given to him by Mr. Noah, he returned to the appearance he had before he was cursed, and he sincerely thanks everyone. The protagonist asks, in horror, if he was cursed. It's a very shameful story, but other merchants tricked him and he was cursed to be a goblin. With such an appearance, no one wanted to deal with him, so he sank to the level of an ordinary money changer. However, Mr. Noah paid attention to this and still agreed to work with him. He's a very wonderful person and even removed this nasty curse from her. Ekiguya says that now that he looks normal, he was able to return Gina to the guild and withdraw his money, so from now on he will continue to work with the Carter estate. Sebastian asks in surprise about the Gina Guild, and the protagonist asks him if he knew about it. The richest trading guild in the world, he heard that one of its members went missing. However, who could have known that Mr. Sabrin was the missing merchant, stands in bewilderment. The protagonist, in horror, asks Sebastian why he brought him. Isn't he his friend? This could be the mistake of the century. Sabrin reports that it is amazing how miraculously Mr. Noah's huge heart was able to lift the curse from Mr. Sabrin. This story should be passed on from generation to generation to generation. Let people gather. They will spread the word. I ask Lista what she is carrying. The girls watching this report on how kind this is. Their leader is generous. A journey from darkness to light. They would get involved in something like this. The protagonist announces that he no longer wants to own these lands. Sabrin understands that it seems that his help is no longer needed. The action then moves into the dark depths of the Forest of Death, into the domain of the demon king, Keranostius. Someone sits in front of the king and sees the main character in the drawing, saying that this is the new hero, Noah Carter. He asks if he needs to get rid of him. In fact, the silhouette sitting on the throne turns out to be a young-looking girl with horns, Mrs. Mo. Late at night, the cat walks around the estate and notices a light on in a room, wondering in confusion why the light is on at such a time. She looks into the room and sees a candle on the table. Someone asks someone if Noah has gone to bed yet. Someone answers yes. The girl understands this and says that in this case she will announce the beginning of a meeting of people who will decide how to support Noah. There are 4 young girls in the room, and the cat is shocked to think that this is a gathering of fanatics. The girls discuss what they already know. Mr. Noah hasn't left his room for the last few days. A week has passed. What could he possibly be doing there? Kitty thinks about what such a thing really is. She understands that he is simply offended. The main character stated that he does not want to do anything anymore because every time he does something, something incredible happens, so he will simply stop. So now he really does nothing. The girl with the eye patch laughs and says that it is very stupid to think that he can understand what her beloved Noah is thinking. Riaiza is asked about what she just said, whether she is saying that he can find out what Noah is thinking. The girl says that, of course, she is a dark mage. She cannot help but know this because she is his shadow. A girl approaches her and asks what it means. Another girl tells her that the only one who understands what he's thinking is, it is she who believes that Noah is thinking about the future of these lands. All the girls are surprised by this. The cat thinks that Noah is not thinking about this at all. However, when Sarah is asked what she means by the future, she tells Lista that the Carter lands have many problems. As they already know, this territory is located on the border with the Forest of Death, which is quite dangerous. Moreover, on the other side of the forest are the possessions of the demons of Keranostia. They have kept their territory in fear for many years. As long as the Demon King is alive, things will not be easy for the Carter lands, and it can be assumed that Noah is now actively thinking about how to deal with him. She is asked if he is thinking about his plan. Now it is clear what he is doing. In other words, the main character actually plans to destroy the Demon King. The girl says that this is true. They think that he is very good, The cat thinks that how differently all people think, Noah does not even know about the demon king of this era. The girl asks why Mr. Noah locked himself in the room. With his strength, there is no chance that he is playing the demon king. The second girl reports that this is true. Noah is blessed by heaven, but he has no motive to invade the demon lands. The blonde girl states that she knows, and Lista is asked if it is true. She reports that if Mr. Noah goes there alone, then Carter's possessions will remain defenseless. All three girls agree with this conclusion. And although he needs to defeat the Demon King to save these lands, he will have to leave their territory to do so, which is a problem. The girls talk about how they are upsetting them here. They are here to be the prince's knights. She thinks about how dare Noah think of them as a burden. Tata and the knights will protect these lands. The mages and Reza will not stand aside. They both look at each other and start arguing. One says that she will be the one who will help the master. The girl in the hat says that the magicians belong to the prince. The cat thinks with awkwardness that the witch and the knight are arguing again. The girl watching this says that it is now clear what he is really thinking about. Both turn to her in bewilderment. She informs them that Mr. Noah is waiting, so that the inhabitants of these lands will worry less. Using their rivalry, he makes the townspeople become stronger to protect the territory, and then he will go on a campaign to destroy the Demon King, but before that, waiting, here is his path. So, with their collective mind, they finally figured out what Mr. Noah is thinking about. The balance between the mind and the heart. That's why he is the Lord of Shadows. Does that mean they need to get stronger? They will work hard. The cat calls them names in her mind. The girls say that having thought everything through as far as expected from Mr. Noah, she will devote her life to serving her Noah. The girls state that they will do everything possible for the locals. All she feels for Noah is love and respect. After that, they do a triple handshake, and the cat is shocked and thinks that this is complete madness. No one needs to be told about this. She goes further down the hall. The girl knocks on the door and shouts to the protagonist that the people have started to riot, so he must do something about it. There's a paper on his door asking not to disturb him. The protagonist is horrified and says that she is too noisy. He has already decided not to do anything. From now on, he is a recluse. Let her not come here anymore. The girl behind the door starts to get angry, and the main character declares that he doesn't care what happens next. Later, during the day, the main character and the cat on his shoulder watch something in shock. He looks at the girl with horns in shock and loudly asks why the Demon King is now kneeling in front of him and crying, "What is going on here?" A few hours ago, in the domain of the Demon King Karanastia, a servant came to the queen and asked permission to report to her. Under the command of the new lord of the Carter lands, Noah Carter, is the commander of the knightly order and the supreme mage. Moreover, the other day they discovered a deposit of ore and were able to get a huge amount of money, so much so that the lord did not know what to do with it. The spies sent by the previous king were discovered and injured to the point that they were no longer able to carry out any missions, so she dares to guess. She assumes that the new Lord Noah plans to take over the demon lands. The queen understands this. Tears appear in the queen's eyes. She begins to sob and asks what she should do. She is very scared, because their country will be destroyed. The servant asks his mistress Mo to calm down. The girl says that the Demon King is her father. She is asked to pull herself together. She is informed that her father has actually left them long ago. The girl is surprised by this and says that it is true, she is now the queen, but no one listens to what she says. The servant turns to his queen again, and the girl sits and thinks that everything is so because she is actually a half-breed, the child of a demon and a human. Her father left her the throne before his death, but the demons did not accept her, starting to ignore her orders, watching her every action. If she were a pure blood, would they listen to her? Would they unite under her command or not? The servant informs that she is not the only one suffering, that she is not the only one in the demon world, that if they can find demons who will follow them, then their children will become their followers. However, there are none of them. The same thing applies to weak demons. They die under the pressure of the strong. The girl asks what will happen if he challenges. The servant informs the queen that she will definitely die, and her head will fly off her shoulders with one swing. The girl is surprised by this. The girl thinks that this is very scary. She doesn't want to die, she doesn't want anyone to get hurt, and she doesn't want to get hurt either. She still has so much to do, but if nothing is done, then many demons may die, and if they die, then she will be guilty before her father, In this case, the girl decides to exchange her life for the future of the demon people. This is the least she can give. The servant is surprised to realize that even though she is now a queen, such a young girl has to sacrifice herself. This world is very cruel. She has grown up very strong. The girl stands and silently asks for someone to please save her. In the present, the protagonist asks in horror why the demon king is now kneeling before him. He also asks who let this girl in cosplay into his office. The girl asks him for something. The girl loudly asks the protagonist to stop preparing for an attack on the demon kingdom. She continues on her knees and begs him, because the demons do not want to fight. The protagonist looks at her in bewilderment and asks about the attack on the demon kingdom. Noah asks the girl what she's talking about, what brought her here in the first place. If she wants to have fun, then let her choose another place. In such a situation, it's natural to act stupid. He's probably keeping it a secret. Humans and demons have been fighting each other for years. It's no wonder he's going to go against them. The protagonist asks how that is. The demon queen states that this is why she will give him her life, let him do with it whatever he wants, and therefore asks him not to drag the demons into this war. The main character thinks about what she is talking about. It doesn't look like she is joking. The cosplayer doesn't even listen to them. He even feels sorry for her. The girl wipes away her tears and declares that all she wants is peace. The protagonist has a serious face. The main character stretches out his hand to her, and the girl is afraid of this. He strokes her head and says that he is too. The main character confidently states that he does not need the child's life. The demon queen looks at the guy in bewilderment. The guy already said that it's okay. He doesn't know what it's like to be a demon queen, but he still forgives her, and since no one objects, they will all live in peace. The main character, with an outstretched hand, tells her that he promises her that he will protect her world. He offers to negotiate about this. The girl joyfully and surprisedly asks if this is true, if not only will he not attack, but will also take the powerless demons under his wing. The cat informs him that he again said something that should not have been said. The demon queen tells the guy that he is a very kind person. The guy in shock asks if he promised to protect the demons. He didn't mean that at all. Lista enters the room and says with a smile that this is what was expected from Mr. Noah. Not only did he listen to the request of the demon queen, but he also offered them his patronage. The main character is shocked that this happened again. The main character looks at Rory, the cat, and asks her to say something. The cat says that this child is the queen of demons. Everything is clear from her power. He, in shock, asks to say something better. The girl throws herself into his arms with gratitude. The cat grins and announces that there is a new member in the cult of Noah's worship, and the guy angrily asks Rory what she is even talking about. Suddenly, someone also enters the room, and the main character asks what it is this time. It is the servant of the demon queen who enters. The advisor turns to his queen and bows. The queen asks what happened. The protagonist behind him asks who he is. The advisor asks for forgiveness and talks about what happened. The advisor reports that rumors have spread that Her Majesty has surrendered to the people and to bring him back. The advisor loudly declares that they are already on their way to destroy the lands of Carter. The demon queen is shocked by this news. For a while, they just stood there in silence, and the main character suddenly feels something and turns to the side, after which a huge explosion occurs. The protagonist then reacts quickly and quickly casts a protective circle, placing it in front of him and protecting everyone behind him. The main character addresses everyone and asks if it is possible to stop breaking into his house without an invitation, and someone flying appears in a hole in the wall. Someone makes a slight bow and announces that he is pleased to meet you and that his name is Outsider. The demon queen asks Ostater where he came from. Noah asks her if he knows if they are extremist demons or the opposite faction. It turns out that these are demons of a special rank. The Outsider stands with his arms outstretched to the sides. He is dressed in beautiful clothes. The protagonist asks in confusion if this girl is really the demon queen to say such things. She says that everything is correct. Noah asks what they want from him. The Outsider reports that it is obvious that they found out that their queen was kidnapped by a man, so they came to get her back. The Outsider addresses all the people and demands that they return the queen immediately. The protagonist with a calm face declares that he did not touch her and certainly did not kidnap her. And also, besides, the main character notices and asks about the fact that he is lying. He smells a lie. The Outsider is shocked to realize that this man was able to read the thoughts of a high-ranking demon. Lista asks the protagonist if this is true. The protagonist discontentedly reports that it is obvious. The protagonist asks what he wants from him. He is so busy here, even though he was locked up for some time. The outsider says that everything is simple. The outsider boldly demands that they give Carter's domain to the demons. The demon queen is shocked and asks the outsider what he is even talking about. The outsider states that this is the demon's true goal. A few days ago, the annoying barrier was broken, after which they were able to break through to the human world to finally get this land. The protagonist realizes that he doesn't even know that Noah himself was the one who broke the barrier. The queen asks if he even understands how many demons could suffer because of this. She doesn't remember her ever allowing them to do that. The outsider orders the girl to be silent. They do not need the permission of the weak daughter of the king, who has been ridiculed all her life. He is grateful that she remains trash, which can only be a bargaining chip. The protagonist realizes that it seems the situation in the demon world is not very pleasant. The protagonist asks if they want to exchange. The outsider asks about the exchange and says that it is a rather interesting idea, let's say, but he will not agree to penny conditions. In fact, there will soon be as many as 10,000 high-ranking demons in every village in this territory. The cat is surprised by this number and understands that he was going to enslave these lands from the very beginning. She asks Noah about what they should do in this case. However, despite everything, the main character shows a positive gesture with a smile and agrees. Everyone present is shocked by this. The cat asks the guy what he is talking about. He is just going to give them the territory. The guy says that this is true. If he lets so many demons on his land, then consider that he will be in their hands. He asks what will happen to the current lord in that case. The cat understands something and asks not to tell her. The protagonist smiles as he thinks that if they seize power over the lands, he will be able to become the deposed lord and not have to worry about anything else. The cat asks the guy what he is saying. What will happen to the inhabitants then? She pokes him in the cheek with her paw. Noah says that since the demons will take these lands, he will simply transfer them here with the help of magic. The protagonist asks the outsider if they want land. He agrees and adds that he wants to take over the human world. The main character asks the outsider what he will offer him, what he will receive for this possession. The demon looks at the guy in bewilderment. The guy says that for a good exchange, both sides must benefit from it. Is this true? The cat asks the guy not to tell her that he also wants to get something for this. The guy says that he will not give up his lands just like that. She asks the guy what he is talking about. The guy says that he is just bargaining, and the cat is indignant because he is bargaining with a high-ranking demon. However, whoever he is, the protagonist must receive something in return, or let him return with a mediator with whom they discuss all the conditions. They brought 10,000 demons into the territory. The guy says that bringing so many demons for one girl is somehow wasteful. The protagonist asks Rory the cat why she is so worried, and the demon queen and the outsider if she really thinks that these guys with such weak mana are really important. After this, the demon queen is surprised, and the outsider is simply silent. Rory is shocked to think that this guy does not understand anything at all. If this continues, it will lead to a full-scale war with the demons. The outsider reports that even when his subordinates are attacked, he is too calm. Noah says that he is not exactly worried about them, the villagers are scared. After this, the outsider laughs and says that he can finally afford it, and some kind of ball appears above his palm. He announces that he will now order his entire army to destroy these lands. The ball in his hand has already fully formed. The protagonist is angry at the demon, but he laughs and tells him that it's all over. The outsider promises to make him regret mocking him. A high-ranking demon, someone from the ball, addresses the demon. The demon asks what happened there, whether they finished capturing people. Someone was just about to report it. Someone from the circle reports that in fact, their army has already been completely defeated. The outsider is surprised by this. The outsider asks the demon, kneeling on the ground, about what is going on there, and he tells them that as he ordered them, they attacked the village, but there they were met by the knightly order and the order of magicians. And also, the ordinary inhabitants of this village turned out to be very strong, so much so that they stood up to them. The main character, in horror, says that this can't be. How could this happen? Rory tells the guy that this is what villains usually say. The guy gets down on his knees and grabs his head. Rory reports that the residents trained with magicians and knights. She already told him about this. Noah says that if they defeated all the demons, then they can't become losers, and they can't allow that to happen at all. The outsider watches this. Suddenly, the demon points his finger at the guy and says that it was all his trap, but the guy angrily asks how it came to this. The outsider tells Noah that now he will definitely not forgive him because he deceived him. He attacks the main character, shouting his name. Suddenly, the protagonist gets angry because the outsider is problematic. He seizes the moment and simply attacks the demon with his hand. From such a blow, the demon immediately falls to the ground, which shocks the demon queen. After the demon fell, the main character grabs his head and realizes that he first needed to calculate the speed in order not to knock him down with one blow, and he did that too. The cat tells him that if he was attacked, then he should fight back. It is natural, like if you throw an apple, it will fall. So if he was attacked, then he needs to fight back. But the outsider is still alive. He barely gets to his feet and tells Noah Carter that he is a monster. The protagonist understands that this is the voice of the main demon. Someone reports that this was expected from their master Noah. Their lord defeated the boss. He is the best master in the world. The main character asks in bewilderment if this is some kind of joke. Rory reports that it now looks like he predicted the demon's actions, lured them into a trap, and dealt with this boss. The protagonist is shocked. The cat adds that they think he is an amazing master. The protagonist is shocked and asks what is happening. The queen asks if the extremist demons have been defeated, which means that the weak demons will no longer be drawn into strife. Suddenly, the girl throws herself into the arms of the main character, which shocks him. She sincerely thanks the guy, saying that they, the demons, are in his debt and will do everything in their power for these lands. The cat tells the guy that he looks more like a fool than a monster. The guy scolds her and understands that if this continues, he will end up like always. Suddenly, Lista appears from behind and says that it is wonderful, because the war with the demons is over. The guy asks her to be silent and not to say anything else. She says that this is what was expected from Mr. Noah. The protagonist tearfully complains that there is too much work. He asks Rory to help him. The girl angrily asks who he just called that. Let him not call her that anymore. She can't help, because he himself made friends with demons and now they have to clean it up. She tells him that he only puts the seals and approves the documents, and all the important parts are done by Sarah and Lista. Suddenly, the demon queen enters the room and tells the guy that she would like to talk to him. The protagonist tearfully tells her that it's all because she's the demon queen, and if she wants to burden them even more, Rory says that he deserves it. The demon queen awkwardly states that it's just the times like these, and she apologizes for that. The protagonist asks the girl if she needs help. The queen says that the whole point is that he couldn't do something about the filth. The protagonist asks her what the filth is. The queen tells him that the filth is a fog that surrounds the territories of demons. Although they have resistance to it, it is deadly for people. As a first step to their alliance, she would like to ensure free entry and exit from their territories, and the filth will not allow this. The main character asks if they can't come in and out whenever they want. The girl tells the guy that the park has existed for many years, although she said that they have stability. However, it is not 100%. Rory says that now it has become clear why the demons coveted human lands. The main character is unhappy. The guy asks why he has such bad luck. Rory asks him if he ever thought about how he accumulated too much karma in his past life. He says that it was rude. Noah confidently and with a smile tells them that in his past life he was a hero who defeated many villains. Rory tells him that this is the point. They hate him. The queen says that she will be happy to help him. The guy notices her shining eyes. The protagonist confidently asks them to provide this to Noah. The queen happily says that this is what was expected of him. Rory sits and smiles. The protagonist is asked why he does this. He answers that he uses the filth to fail. Then, in the territory of the Demon Queen, now the province of Kartakurunostia, there stands a gloomy, huge castle. The main character stands and says that they got to the castle quickly. And what next? They need to find the place where it is denser. They need to study it first. Rory on his shoulder asks the guy what he will do next. The main character with the crazy smile says that after this he will spray it even more. Rory, in shock, asks about this and says that he promised to help. The guy calls her stupid and says that he will get rid of the filth and will seem skilled. He reports that now the filth is only accumulating over the demon country. But if he spreads it to the province of Carter, what will happen? The cat informs him that if he does this, the province will become a wasteland. The main character confidently declares that everything is right and he will turn his territory into a wasteland, and then he will cease to be a lord. The cat reports that he is terrible. She tells him that even if everything works out, his methods are disgusting. Did he think about the residents? The guy asks if they will die right away. He will have time to evacuate everyone before the serious spread of the filth. The cat tells him that people will lose their homes, in case he hadn't figured it out. The guy tells him that they can just give them mansions elsewhere and they'll settle there. And he, in turn, is recognized as an incompetent ruler. Is this an ideal plan? Will it really work? Then they come to the right place, and the main character goes inside, reporting that they are in the center of the demon castle. Rory reports that it is strange here and the air is stale. She asks him if he's okay. The guy replies that it couldn't be better. It seems that the filth comes from here, whether its source is inside the castle. The cat thinks that maybe the castle hides the source. The guy understands that the bad thing is probably forming under it, in which case they can't do anything, thinks Rory. However, Noah thinks that it's even easier, you just need to blow it up. The cat is shocked and asks why. The guy explains that if he destroys the castle, all the filth will fly away in an instant, and this could even be recorded in history. Rory explains to him that this is too rude. Is he serious because the damage will be colossal? The guy says that, of course, he would have gone that far. She says that if he uses the same magic as in the battle with the volcanic turtle, then the whole country will fall. The guy says that he will not use it, he just needs to demolish one castle. The main character flies up, and Rory asks the guy what he will do when everything starts to spread. He asks her to put on a helmet and gives it to her. The guy flies up with the cat over the castle. The main character points to the lock, makes a ring with his finger, and asks if it is enough. Then, explosions occur. The cat notices in shock and asks if the castle blew up. Towers start to break off from the castle. The cat is shocked and says that the remains have turned to dust. The main character calls himself a castle destroyer. The cat asks the guy what he did. The guy admits that he just snapped his fingers, but she doesn't believe it. The guy tells her that the result is right before her eyes. He simply increased the vibrations to a level that would be enough to destroy the castle. It is not necessary to use magic to destroy some castle. The cat says she doesn't understand anything. She asks if it was magic. She asks the boy to understand that his definition of normal is different from most. Suddenly, the cat notices something. They let out a surprised cry. A black aura appears in front of them. The main character happily says that the filth has begun to come out and that this is simply wonderful. Now all they have to do is wait, and the wind will carry this nastiness all over the area, and the province will become uninhabitable. He laughs and calls it a victory. The guy starts laughing out loud. The cat thinks that he is turning into the Demon King. A few days later, at the protagonist's home, the Demon Queen throws herself into the guy's arms and joyfully informs him that all the filth has disappeared. The main character is shocked by this news. She says that this is what was expected from Noah. The guy in horror asks what she means. The girl reports that, in truth, the source of the filth was the castle itself, and after its destruction, among the rubble, they found something like a magical device that created this filth. The cat understands that the castle itself was the source. The main character is again unhappy about this. The queen happily reports that all their territories are now filled with fresh air, and there is no trace left of the filth. It is simply incredible. He so quickly solved this problem that they could not solve for generations. He was also able to destroy the castle that the first Demon King built without causing any harm to the surrounding cities. That he destroyed the castle, which is an important symbol for all demons. She reports that it was for their own sake, because he promised that he would lead all the demons, and he expected nothing less from them. The protagonist thinks that her faith is too strong. The cat understands that she has become one of the followers of his cult. The guy, in tears, asks why everything he does ends up being the exact opposite of the original plan. The cat says that it seems to her that the souls of those he killed are really cursing him, and that a purification ritual may take place. The protagonist lies on the grass next to Roro, who then tells him that he is like this every day. The guy tells her that if every day risks being ruined by another incident, the cat says that it seems you understand him. Then the main character falls asleep and hears some sounds. He wakes up, sits up straight, and asks what that noise is. The cat also opens one eye and asks where he is from. The guy says that there should be no one else here except them. He decides to go and see. The source of the noise turns out to be a young girl wearing glasses, holding a sword in her hands, practicing her blows on a log tied with a rope. She then manages to cut one of the logs in half, and the protagonist is surprised that this is a child so far from the village. The main character approaches her from behind. She tries to catch her breath. The guy rudely addresses her and asks what she is doing. The girl is frightened by such a sudden appearance. Thanks to her reflexes, the girl immediately attacks the main character with a sword, but he, without any hesitation, grabs her sword with his hand. The girl is surprised, realizing that she could not even detect his presence. The girl bows down and begs for forgiveness, asking him if he is hurt. Noah tells her that everything is fine. He asks her what she is doing here. Rory asks the gentleman to stop talking to her like that. She reports that she trains here and her name is Urian. She travels everywhere for practice. She didn't think that there was anyone else here. The protagonist asks Urian again about her travels for practice. Rory asks the guy if he is up to something bad again. Noah, without answering the cat, turned to Urian. The guy tells her with a smile that since she is here, she would like to learn from him, from the great master Noah. Rory is surprised by her master's prank, and surprised Urian asks if it is really possible. The cat asks the guy to stop pretending to be incompetent. The guy angrily asks her if she's at it again. She's irritating him. The souls the guy killed in his past life cling on, and that's why everything he does comes back to haunt him, or so Rory said. The protagonist angrily tells her that he can't. The cat asks if she should think about what will happen next, but still asks Noah what he will do next. The guy decides to call it a plan, to show the kid how irresponsible he really is. The main character with a sly smile decides to disappoint this girl. She will never touch a sword again, and his reputation will immediately fall to the bottom. The cat tells him that he simply has a disgusting fantasy. The cat suddenly looks at the girl and realizes that she has seen her somewhere before. Urian asks Noah what kind of weapon he has. The main character awkwardly holds his head and is in no hurry to give the girl an answer to her question. The main character takes a random branch from the ground and lifts it up, saying that this stick is enough for him. The girl prepares her sword and thinks that his confidence and movements indicate that he is not an ordinary person. In this case, the girl decides to give it her all, and she suddenly rushes straight to the guy. Even Rory is surprised that it was so fast, but the protagonist says that it was slow. In this case, the girl decides to act differently, and two identical copies of herself appear in front of her. However, the main character doesn't care and easily defeats these clones. The girl is shocked at how quickly and easily he dealt with them. Then the main character asks the girl with a smile if it was all too weak. The cat turns to the main character and wants to tell him that this child is already strong. She is not even sure whether this girl is a child. Urian smiles and tells Noah that it was surprising. She underestimated him. The protagonist slightly mocks and asks Urian about her condescending tone. Then the main character gets into a fighting stance and asks the girl to come to him and show the results of her training. The girl agrees to his challenge. After this, the girl attacks the protagonist, using a flurry of autumn rain on him, but the protagonist successfully blocks all attacks. After this, the main character uses the return of the autumn rain squall and begins to attack his rival in response. Suddenly, the girl jumps behind the main character and attacks him from there. However, the main character, even with his back to her, blocks her blow with a stick, which makes her angry. The guy bursts out laughing and asks the girl if this is all she is capable of. Training has taught her nothing at all. The cat asks why these sounds are made when a sword and a stick collide. The girl tries hard to resist him, but the main character continues to laugh at her and asks if that's all. The girl thinks that Noah is an amazing person. He even copied her technique and she can't do anything. The protagonist confesses to the girl that her efforts were in fact in vain. He asks her with a crazy smile to go back to her mommy. Rory says that this villainous expression suits him too well. However, the girl is not going to back down and says that in such a situation, only this will help her. The guy asks her if she has anything left. She says that no, this technique was created to destroy demons. In fact, she wouldn't want to use it on a normal person. However, the guy sighs. The main character, with a self-confident smile, asks the girl to stop making excuses and approach him, and she agrees. Suddenly, the girl raises the sword up. Rory tells the guy that this attack is too strong, and if he faces it, he will die. The main character thinks about what is possible, and that is why he decides to accept it. The girl is focused, and she uses the secret technique of the holy sky, but the main character does not let her do this and immediately attacks the girl, causing her to fly back. The girl lies on the ground with a concussion, and the main character rejoices at this, while Rory is horrified. She realizes that the protagonist attacked her while she was charging this deadly technique, how insidious it was. The main character decides to ask the girl if she really thought she could activate it right in front of her enemy. There is no place for justice on the battlefield. The girl lies on the ground, completely exhausted. Rory tells Noah that he made the baby cry. The protagonist apologizes to her, explaining that this is actually a cruel reality. Now she will definitely consider him her enemy. Suddenly, the girl gets to her feet and goes to him. Despite the arguments of the main character, the girl, all beaming, tells the guy that it is delightful. The main character is perplexed by her. She happily tells Noah that even his amazing swordsmanship cannot compare with knowledge. She was wrong. The main thing in a fight is victory. The guy reluctantly agrees with her. He awkwardly asks the girl if she is disappointed in the end. She says that she is, of course, sad that she was not able to even touch him once, but she truly fell in love with the guy's sword art. The main character with Rory on his shoulder is shocked by her words. The protagonist continues to look in shock at the girl who asks for permission to become his student. The next day, the demon queen rushes into the protagonist's arms with tears and a scream. The guy asks her what happened now. The girl asks with tears why. The demon queen points her finger at the same girl with the sword and asks the guy why she is here. The queen confesses that this girl is her eternal enemy, the hero, Jurian. The main character screams in shock at this news. Lista reports that she remembered something. Urian is a real hero. It was she who was seen in the castle. She did not recognize her because of her glasses. The protagonist is shocked, wondering if this weakling is a hero and where her glasses went. Lista tells him that he is simply too strong and that he should stop comparing this world to the past. Suddenly, they are interrupted by the demon queen, in tears, asking Mr. Noah to help her. Urian tells the guy that she is surprised by this. He really did tame the demon queen, although Les was a Quebecan. The protagonist tells her that she is indeed almost tamed. He asks her if she is going to kill her. She asks for help in horror. However, Urian says that of course she is not going to kill her, so why would she kill his servant? And anyway, people and demons have already signed a truce act. The hero now has no responsibilities. He just trains. The demon queen reports that it has become clear to her. She thanks her and reports that now her number one fear has disappeared. The protagonist reports that it is strange. He thought that she would hate him, however. The queen tells him that he is the best, surpassing both the demon king and the hero. Urian also admits that this was expected from her teacher. The protagonist is horrified by the words of these girls. The guy holds his hand to his face and asks himself with displeasure why everything always ends this way.